Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So I think this talk was advertised as the power of sound. The power of sound. But of course, there are many questions that arise around this as preliminaries. And one question came up here at Nivedita House that I seem to, and I'm paraphrasing, I seem to have lost my connection with the divine. How can I reconnect? And so I began informally dealing with this question by saying that in our normal everyday life, we can catch ourselves in a routine, but ultimately the routine brings us up its own problems because nothing in life is smooth. It's not supposed to be smooth. And so everybody has difficulties of some kind, be they physical, be they psychological, emotional, be they of some kind intellectual. And the fundamental problem really is a spiritual one. We don't normally register it in this way. We don't normally think of it because we take the physical as the physical. We make all these separations and compartments. We take the mental as the mental, and we have specialist areas and remedies for these things. So if I'm suffering physically, then I may go and see a doctor, or I may take some medicines, or I may do some kind of remedial action anyway. And so we are acutely and astutely aware of this with the COVID. More or less, just about every second person we meet seems to have this COVID virus. But on every level, we find the smoothness that we desire is not really there. If you ask somebody what value do you want above all else, they may say peace. They're talking about world peace. They're talking about peace in the environment. But mostly, of course, we're concerned with individual peace. And we only get that when we are physically healthy, when we are mentally occupied and joyful, when we are culturally stimulated. All these avenues are there. But we can see that these are various fields that can be observed in front of us. And behind us is a vast entity or vast being, which is called spirit. How do we know this? We know this by introspective analysis. We know this by a logical pursuit of going inward, simply identifying what fields are in front to observe and who or what is the observer. But that is not convincing enough. It has to be experienced firsthand. So all these difficulties, no matter how routine a life we try to live, getting up in the morning, eating breakfast, going to work, having lunch, coming back, maybe watching a little television or something, sleeping, repeating the same process in the morning. Life is not like that because during all those interim periods, some difficulties may arise. Somebody may challenge you. Or maybe you fall sick on one day. Or maybe somebody tells you something or points a finger at you and upsets your equilibrium radically. This is the power of sound. Sound in terms of names or in terms of conversations have the capacity to make the mind react. And normally, if it's an attack against us, or if we feel that life is against us and we feel we are a victim, then we spontaneously come up with some kind of defense system or attacking system. There are three ways to tackle these problems. We can crash into a wall. If a wall presents itself as an obstacle, but as I said earlier, everybody who has tried it will end up with a severe headache, perhaps even concussion. But if you run away from it, it doesn't help either. It's a temporary relief. You'll have to face the same thing again. It won't remove the obstacle. And the other avenue we have is to yield to it, to stand mesmerized, continue our routine as if nothing happened. A clever person, a wise person, will take life not as a struggle with these various problems in the way, but they take them as a series of useful obstacles that challenge us to find a way around. Water knows how to do this. Rocks do not present any enemy. Rocks in the flow of water, it's not that nature hurls rocks at water and makes war with it. Come on. This is a war of worlds, rocks versus liquids, solids versus liquids. Who will be the winner? No, the capacity that water has to mold itself to any shape and find an easy route around any obstacle is inherent in it. And it finds a way around easily, naturally, without a struggle. And ultimately finds a way around. So, if in normal daily life we can find a technique where words that act as a kind of stone in a pond and create ripples of anger, ripples of self-pity, so many different varieties of ripples that make us feel internally miserable. This condition of internal misery, of course, will have its effect on the external body also. Because every single aspect of the body, every part, and every subpart, and every subatomic particle is intrinsically something like a vibration. Now we are aware of vibrations by two examples. Music itself is a vibration. When we have a stringed instrument, simply allowing it to vibrate will, when amplified suitably, produce a sound. And we can manipulate the sound in such a way that a sequence of notes will let us have something that is elevating or delightful, or, of course, something that is noisy, and it can drag our mood down. The quickest and easiest way to change a mood is through music. And the quickest way to reduce our mood down to an area of self-pity and a feeling of anger and revenge and all of those negative qualities will be sound in the form of words. Now, all of this sound, we have another example. We can call it vibration, we can call it sound. When the ear catches it, we call it sound. We can take a metal table, we can put some sand on it, just haphazardly, in any direction, no particular pattern. And then we can gently tap on the metal plate. Observe what happens. All the particles will arrange themselves in a very coordinated pattern. It'll be a pattern that is aesthetically pleasing. How is it that these particles have the intelligence to do that? Well, it's not. They're simply responding to vibrations. If we can imagine that this whole universe is simply a series of these vibrations and oscillations, this point of view would be highly compatible with modern science. In fact, one very favorite theory, not proven, very difficult to establish, very complicated, requiring complicated mathematics, requiring more dimensions than what we observe, all speculations, is something called string theory. It imagines that at the subatomic particle level, even beneath that, the quintessential essence of this universe is an arrangement of strings. That is, literally lines with their own dimensions which have their individual configurations and therefore vibrations, and manifest themselves in this world. But what we find is the ancient yogis had the same kind of idea. They viewed energy as simply a series of oscillations and vibrations. Where do they come from? Well, according to them, they come in varying degrees of subtleties and combinations until they arrive at what we call solid walls and tables and chairs, bodies and teenagers. But ultimately, these are all combinations of subtle elements. And these subtle elements, if we have the inner ear to catch them, the mystics can catch them, can see what their actual sound is. And they can see that it comes directly from that overall primordial sound. And the yogis hear this as Om. Om, of course, can be analyzed because it is a combination of 3 sounds. The Mandukya Upanishad will make a science of this. It'll bring us into the philosophy and the psychology of 3 states of consciousness, each sound symbol representing a certain state. But if we carry along the theme of vibrations, each state will be a series of vibrations. The quietest of all will be a kind of potential vibration of potential creativity. In our own experience, we can call this dreamless sleep. And in this dreamless sleep, something arises. So, from a cosmological point of view, all of these vibrations, all of these creations, all of these manifestations, all of these oscillations really emanate from a creative potential. The subtle vibration of that erupts from time to time. We're talking of eons and eons of time. Great scientist Carl Sagan would have told us it is only the ancient Hindus which have a realistic view of cosmic time, talking about eons and eons, not mere thousands of years, but eons in eons of time, and well divided, mathematically divided into mantvaras and so on, subsections and sections, and eras, cycles, and that these are repeated, leading them to the conclusion that what we call overall this world called nature is actually an eternal thing. And when we say there's a beginning, we're really talking of the beginning of a cycle, the beginning of an oscillation that increases in its frequency and its wavelength to come out to what we see. And look at the beauty of it. What we see is only through the eyes. Now we can say the eyes or the eyeballs are something made from material. They're described simply as matter. And in Sanskrit, in Upanishads, for example, in the Prajna Upanishad, Rai and matter and food is the same thing. Everything is food. Everything is there to be consumed and gets consumed. It's a law of causality, cause and effect. So that as these vibrations occur, we can catch them, we can make use of them. The subtlest of all of these manipulating principles will be thought. There's nothing more powerful than thought. But thought is issued in words. Words and concepts come together. If you say elephant, then immediately a subtle picture of an elephant appears somewhere internally. And this is called, the external form is called rupa form, the internal is called nama. Name, an idea, an ideal. If you simply repeat elephant, 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 with no real meaning, it becomes a boring exercise, and therefore it will have no value except to maybe cure insomnia, create a boredom. So, since we are talking continuous to ourselves, since we are facing many, many difficulties and problems, Since worldliness occupies our mind and our attention constantly, when the question arises, I used to be highly connected to my inner divinity, the infinite invisible, what religion calls God. But now I find I'm estranged from it. How can I go back to it? Well, what was the formula originally used? And when you trace it back, you see it was in words. Words were the key. Words set up a vibration, and that vibration set up a connectedness. Just as if you ask a question, how do I connect with electricity? Well, electricity being ever available and electricity being conducted along a wire, then we can connect to it by switching a light switch. We don't even need a light switch because in the electromagnetic wave system, radio waves are there. How do we connect with radio waves? We have a suitable transistor that does it. And every person today uses it in the form of mobile phones. This is radio technology. If you ask that question in terms of that, how do I connect my mobile phone? Well, you switch it on. That'll be useful. Switching on is a useful technique in any event. But how would I do that? Well, you have to have a motive for doing it. You have to realize the value of a mobile phone. And with that understanding, you decide it is useful to tune into it. There's some benefit of doing it. All of spiritual life begins with this kind of resolve. It begins with a great desire, a desire for truth, or for the devotee, a desire for God. Just a mere desire? No, a passion, a yearning heart, a magnificent obsession, where you're able to think of tuning into that day and night, constantly. But I can't do that, many will say. All right. But you can do it occasionally. Because all scripture, with its do's and don'ts, not aimed at a God, but aimed at the human beings. If you do this and don't do that, you can at least capture this thing called attention and tune it in somewhere. Instead of allowing it to go outward to the world, you can allow it to be poised in an inner area of potentiality, just for a moment. We know how easy it is to divert the attention. We know that when a child falls down and grazes his knee, picking the child up and pointing at the moon or a tree or a flower, but it comes with a word, flower, look, flower, and they draw the attention to the flower. What became of the pain on the knee? It's gone. So we know that at least for a few moments, we can divert our attention. When we learn the practice of constantly tuning, constantly diverting our attention, then we'll get that connectedness. Not only will we get a connectedness, but we'll get a real connection. Sometimes when we tune a radio or speaking with somebody over the internet, the connection may be shaky. And so we find a better way of doing it, a better connection, a stronger internet connection, for example, where the shakiness goes. And then we get real connection, or more of a real connection, but it's not exactly real. Real will be actually seeing the person face to face. The rest will just be a virtual reality. We are living in a virtual reality. Things are not quite what they seem. If it is true that the whole universe is a series of vibrations, then we have to understand that there's great power, because this whole universe full of energy is exceedingly powerful. And the most powerful of all these energies, or sounds, or vibrations, is thought. Thought is an infallible power that goes to its destiny and condenses whatever we want. But there has to be this driving force. We have to convince ourselves. And in the beginning, it may be a struggle, it may be a difficulty. But by repetition, the value of it reveals itself to us. Knowing the power of words can offend us mortally. We cannot ignore them, but we can use them. We can usefully take words and concepts and cultivate them in an effort to steer the mind and our attention toward the most profound reality of our own divinity. A specific technique for doing this will be called the use of a mantra. Mantra, the word, is derived from two derivatives at least. One is derived from the manasa, mind itself, and tra, that is, steering the mind or using the mind to be free. Another derivative will be a protecting thought. Let's take the second meaning. What will it protect you from? It will protect you from pain. It will protect you from doubt, protect you from temptation, and protect you from fear. What kind of mantra would you use? What kind of sound would you employ? Every religion has a variation of mantra. In Eastern Orthodox Christianity, we find the powerful Jesus prayer. Jesus, Son of Mary, have mercy on me. And there are books, The Pilgrim's Way, which give us a wonderful co-journey with a pilgrim to investigate the saying of St. Paul. Pray without ceasing. Well, how is it possible to do it? Well, you take up this prayer. Now, words by themselves are hollow. There has to be a feeling that goes with it, a meaning that goes with it. And so every mantra has a meaning. The primordial mantra, Om, has a meaning. It is not simply a random sound, nor is it a word. It is in no language. It is simply a simulation of that primordial movement from which every other variation, vibration, oscillation comes. Therefore, by repeating this Om with this feeling and understanding of its meaning, we can use it as a tuning mechanism, a kind of tuning fork or a musical instrument that we call the variation of thought, the mind. And so we use thought anyway. We use our conversation anyway. All of us are speaking to ourselves. Even when there's nobody around, all our thoughts come as a kind of running commentary. We can use this running commentary in a more positive way. We can deliberately structure our inner commentary, select the words we want. Supposing we select values, strong, true, wise, full, free, truth, beauty, goodness, love, harmony, like that, in rapid succession, with deep meaning and expression, immediately there'll be a change in your environment. What environment means? The most local environment is your own body. If you say strong, 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 with full meaning, then every single part of the body, subject to vibration, and the whole body is subject to it, will vibrate, will encapsulate this feeling of strength. It will make you strong. Supposing you have something like a meditation. There's one book that recommends it. You sit down and imagine that you're in a room and there's a table with two chairs. And knock on the door. Napoleon walks in. Please sit down. You strike up a conversation with Napoleon. Tell me, in the face of being outnumbered, what was your strategy? And he says, I had inner strength, which I shared with my troops. I had the conviction we would win. I gained the confidence of my troops. They were loyal to me. Won't leadership, strength, and loyalty, won't this come to you? There's a key in meditation. Whatever you meditate on comes to you. The values come to you. You meditate on the strength of an elephant, that comes to you. Swami Vivekananda used to say, I meditate on the heart of a lion. Imagine now, it's not that he was meditating on physiology. Heart was a metaphor. He was meditating on the absolute courage, the fact that the lion is the king of the jungle, the fact that a lion can assert itself with strength and courage, that it can dominate. So these qualities can come to you. When we want to tune in to the very source of all these qualities, first of all, as I say, we need unwavering conviction. We need to have faith. The sun rises and the sun sets. It did it today. Did you notice it? Did you notice the change of color in the sky in the early morning, now becoming earlier in the summer? Did you see how beautiful it is when it descends in the western sky? Did you see how all the flowers orientate their heads toward the sun? How they know without any instruction manual? Did you see how the grass is growing rapidly? Did you see how there's a certain blueness to the skies that wasn't there previously? Do you see the increase of warmth and the response on the skin? Did you see the upliftment of mood when things become warmer after a wintry season? Do you see the budding youth of all the buds in trees ready to flower? Somebody today sent beautiful pictures that spring has come, and everywhere all the flowers are blooming or ready to bloom. There's something different in the air. Every season has its beauty. Where I come from in Zimbabwe, in some areas, there are only 2 seasons, summer and hell. And then in some areas we say, okay, it's the rainy season, the dry season, finished. We don't have these beautiful 4 seasons. We have our own beauty in Africa, of course. But the point is, did you observe these things correctly? And did you understand that you didn't have to petition for them? But Jesus puts it in this language: the birds of the air are fed, and the lilies of the field are clothed. They didn't make a prayer, please clothe me, please give me food. None of these things, these petitions are absent in these creatures. We didn't have to, when waking up in the morning, make a petition, please can I have so many breaths? I could have come here, you see, and held some vapor in my mouth. And as I opened my mouth, the vapor came out. And I would have to say, excuse me, but I'm a little out of breath. I've been breathing all day. No, we don't have to make such a requisition. We take breathing for granted. We take the digestion of food for granted. We take the heartbeat for granted. We don't consider that the heartbeat, in a more creative mood, a more artistic mood, a more poetic mood, could be the divine drumbeat in us, sustaining our life for a purpose. Should we not every moment feel a sense of thankfulness, a sense of wonder, a sense of adoration in every moment? Every second is an opportunity for it. And it all comes really from using the internal script about it, from naming, from feeling, from meditating on it, from feeling the vibration that is there. This is the power of sound. This whole world is sound, and this whole world is powerful. And this whole world can be harnessed. This power can be brought on board, directed usefully. At the moment, the wars are raging throughout the world. But somebody sitting in a cave, engaging the primordial sounds that mobilize the whole universe, doing it with intense feeling and meaning, doing it with a sense of resolve and love, repeatedly doing it, has the capacity to transform the whole world. So we need this particular resolve. that we can actually take this useful instrument all around us, thinking that the whole universe is something like a symphony. And if this nature is a symphony, surely the daffodils will be the trumpeter. We can take it like that, a kind of series of beautiful orchestral movements. And nature knows how to conduct this in a wonderful cosmic rhythmic way. And in doing this, enables life. But do we see it as a series of challenges and problems? Or do we see it in this way, as a series of delightful, joyful waves? Just as waves in the ocean, we can surf them, we can take a board and we can ride the waves. Can we do so with these waves that we call life? We can do it. Why can we do it? Because the operating area is free. The fundamental essence, the fundamental capacity to control is because there is a controller. And that controller has the capacity to stand back and operate it from within. That inner being is no different from the God that you are seeking. Looking for it outside, thinking that is very distant, not thinking that it is, all of this is the Lord's superb symphony, his superb orchestration of different notes with frequencies and wavelengths. A dance of music, musical arrangement, nicely, there for our delight and pleasure. Can we not look at it in this way? And then can we not use these special words in order to tune in constantly? That makes it a protecting thought. Continuously using it with love, with delight. But it requires faith in the beginning. It requires an examination of the things that we take for granted and see them as they are, free gifts delivered to us, unasked, and all in our favor and all for our protection, all for our advancement, all in our favor. The universe is not your enemy. The stones and the rocks that stand in the way of the flow of the river is not the enemy of the river. The water has no enemies like that. The water is a sustaining thing, a life-giving thing. We have a flow also within us. It's called divine grace that acts in this way, that acts as a kind of flowing thing. Thought is one point of it. When we think, this is a flow of this grace flowing through us. What we do with it, that is up to us. So faith in ourselves. Swami Vivekananda once said, you see, these days, in modern times, a real atheist is someone who has no faith in themselves. Nothing to do with God. You have faith in yourself first. Have faith in your individual design. Have faith in your uniqueness, divinely put to fit in and be an instrument in God's glory. And work it out. Play. If this play of waves is truly a play, then play the game well. Constantly I say the game of life, how to play it. Play it well. And then have faith in all those things around you. Now, if you have that, and you recognize that some specific tuning mechanism has to be undergone, then, of course, you make sure that you have standard moments for more intensive practice. But that won't work unless all your working, waking life is handled. So if you're involved in all the issues of your day, be they directly or indirectly, be at a distance, or be they in your own proximity, if you don't have a formula to handle these things there and then, it becomes difficult. And there again, we can use sound. We can use a series of internal words that are powerful, affirmative words. The mind doesn't think in sentences with commas and full stops. It thinks in words. And each word has a corresponding concept. Each word has an image. We can put in whatever we want. We can put in something useful, Or we can relax the mind and allow all these other things to make an influx into the mind and disturb it. As long as the mind is disturbed, we will feel disconnected with our own origin, that religion calls God. How to reconnect? We reconnect, first of all, with faith. And once we have the faith, then we have all fear is gone. The opposite of faith is fear. And when fear is gone, then we have freedom. Freedom means we have no fear. We are free from fear. We are free from pain. We are free from doubt. Now, this requires connectedness of an intimate kind. Intellectual connectedness is not really connectedness. It's just abstract. Real connectedness involves feeling. Supposing our desire is to feel loved. It's no good as an intellectual concept. We have to feel the influx of love, and we have to feel the response of love too. Anything short of that is just mere superficial. So really the question is not about connectedness. It's about real connectedness. It's about touching the feet of God. It's about entering into his sitting room. It's about gazing on him lovingly, allowing yourself to be gazed in return. In devotional language, that's what it means. From the philosophical point of view, it's connectedness to truth. How can we connect to truth? We do this by a process of discernment. What we do is we look at this world and see what is it that's disturbing the mind? What is creating a reaction, an overreaction in us? It's as if the mind is full. You see, there are two ways we can use this term mindfulness. We can say mindful, or we can say the mind is full. For most people, the mind is full of all kinds of things, full of other people's garbage, full of our own garbage. Because when we allow a lapse in self-control, it's like vacating a house. You vacate a house, it'll be occupied by something. Spiders and rats will occupy it. This place that we're living in here was not occupied for something like 1.5, 2 years. Naturally, vermin occupied it. It was full of all kinds of insects and rats and what have you. Naturally, you can't blame those things. You can't blame in the inner city in Dublin, where the Georgian houses were vacated because people from the famine came in on an influx into the cities. They didn't want to be in the same place. So they vacated it and went off to the suburbs. And these glorious Georgian houses were now occupied by squatters, occupied by filth, and eventually collapsed, which highlighted the problem. Society had no compassion for these people. So we have to be careful how we use our housing. And we have to fill it with the highest values. We have to fill it with a spirit of compassion and generosity, a spirit of service to all the higher values. And we do this in terms of words. We do this by making use of sounds. This is called japa, japa yoga. The most powerful and sacred sounds, of course, will be that mantra given by a guru. That means a competent teacher. And in that, there are two varieties of mantras, Vedic mantra and bija mantras, tantric mantras. Tantric mantras come from the realization of yogis accessing the subtle sounds that belong to the subtle portions of energy found in nature. And by accessing that, it becomes a revealing factor for us and reveals more and more and more. But these bija mantras and these components of mantras are well known everywhere. That's not where the potency lies. The potency lies in conveying it through something that is an open channel for divine grace, where that person's ego has been made into an open channel for divine grace to flow. That's what creates the potency. That's what creates a divine connection. Even if you don't have that, by mindfully repeating Om. Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras will tell us that repetition of the sound Om, which happens to be the sound of Ishwara. What is Ishwara? Ishwara is that entity who is responsible for order and rhythm within the universe, an ultimate teacher, an ultimate repository of wisdom or knowledge. Knowledge is a limiting thing with an indication that there's an infinite thing beyond it. I know something, it means there's more to know beyond it. But if you come to a point where no more knowledge is there, a supreme knower is there, then that becomes the supreme for you. No more detail is given in the yoga philosophy, only that much. But that means, of course, that everything that we enjoy, every fruit of our activity, including mental activity, does not belong to us. And for that reason, all the effects and fruits of our activities can be offered back to this entity. Now, in practical life, how can we manage it? We have to manage it by, in the morning or in the evening, even as we go to bed, lovingly repeating this divine name or a series of divine names. You will find that the last thought on going to bed will be the first on awaking. Then make sure that the day is divided into areas. Make sure that we understand each period of the day has its moods. Try to tune into the mood. Try to practice the divine presence everywhere. Try to register your own personal activities as not belonging to you at all, but belonging to this divine source. Just as all our life belongs to the sun, we're all operating on solar energy, nothing more, nothing less. But that divine operates behind the sun. That shining, all things shine, says the Upanishads. So try to see that entity everywhere, and more importantly, to feel it, to feel that presence all around you, to feel that the body is instrumental only, to feel that the mind should be occupied. This requires alertness. At every single moment, we have to assess what is the condition of the mind. And when we see that it is in a condition of laziness, perhaps, or lethargy, or fear, or doubt, or temptation, when we see any egocentric element within it, then we have the capacity, given the time comes to us as a kind of passage, a kind of train. But in the next unit, we can put something useful. We can shift our gear so that we can glide upwards instead of being dragged downwards. The constant way of understanding what is the condition now in this mind and steering it higher. That has to be done with feeling. Doing that constantly is called Abhyasa Yoga. That means constant practice, constant remembrance. Since the reason why we feel disconnected is forgetfulness of this underlying truth. And so religion, it's not that we stopped religious practice, but it's that we didn't do it with a connectedness. We didn't do it with a deep feeling. We didn't do it with trust. We didn't do it with faith. We didn't make a real connection. The more we make the real connection, the more that becomes habitual within us, and the more of a delight it becomes, and the easier it becomes. In the beginning, it may be a struggle. So always do three things. You always engage in japa, whatever that is. Always meditate. Always, never stop meditation practice. And always read some passage of scripture or what corresponds to truth every day. In this way, we keep the momentum going. You see, if we stop keeping the momentum going, we will lapse, we will regress. Like a football, you kick it in the air, you will expect it to come down. Gravity is like that. So when you kick the ball up, and when it comes down, when you see it on its descent, be ready. Kick it back up again. There's that game, like a hot potato. Somebody throws a ball to somebody. They can either handle it or hit it or catch it and pass it on very quickly, but nobody's allowed to drop the ball. This is the same game we have to play with our attention. Keep the attention going. Come on. Being in a compounding position. This is self-control. So just to recap, faith has to be there. We have to have a conviction. Faith will generate resolve and intention. That will result in control, self-control, control of the mind, understanding where it is at any given moment and steering it to a higher value. How do we do this? We make sure that we constantly repeat this sacred mantra or this sound. That is powerful. To show the power of sound, in the ancient days, when they had simple fire ceremony in the forests, they did it in response to an appeasement to all the forces of nature around them. They felt that all the forces, the wind, the air, the sun, all of these were powerful forces. And fire is the most profound discovery of man. It changed man's diet. It changed man's capacity to think, creativity and storytelling gathered around the fire. So fire was an extremely precious commodity. And then look at the wonder of fire. There must be some divine magic element in it. How can you rub two sticks together and fire comes out? What a wonder. So we'll find in the ancient hymns praise to all of these forces. These praise elements are also called mantras. But you see, the thought element came in when it was discovered. The word itself has a potency. We can control these forces of nature. If we deify them and call them gods, we can control the gods. The power of the word, the power of sound, what we call Nada Brahman, that entity expressed in sound, expressed in vibration. And then, of course, having done that, having understood that we can control all these vibrations that manifest and condense to what we have now, we can see what is the philosophy behind it. And every mystic has arrived at the same conclusion, that the fundamental source of this Om, this primordial vibration, comes from a cosmic mind. It comes from what religion calls a personal God. It comes from a mind that is not deluded, that has no element of forgetfulness, that manifests whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, and gives us the sense of individuality, which is a forgetfulness of this fact. So by connecting our own thought to that primordial, vibratory, creative entity that in the beginning was the word, every religion will state it in some way or another. So Brahma, the creator in Hinduism, manifests as Vak, literally word. And that word has become feminine and comes to us in our theological system as Saraswati. And then we find in the Neoplatonism the same thing, this idea of nous or logos, word. And this comes out in Christianity, and it also comes out in the Neoplatonistic influence in Islam, and comes out in Sufism. This dikra, this repetition of a holy sound is there. Repeated with music even, with dancing and singing perhaps. What a wonderful way of expressing it. And so it also manifests as John's prologue in Christianity. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh, in other words, condensed and dwelt amongst us. It was with God, it was God, all those kinds of things. Comes back to this Neoplatonistic idea. It is well worth thinking, therefore, that every thought is infallible. Because if there's only that cosmic mind as a supreme thinker, then every thought carries through, for good or ill, as a curse or a blessing. We sometimes think a blessing is like a dove that flows out from the head, and a curse is something like a bolt of lightning that comes out of the mouth. No, it's not like that. Every curse and every blessing is a word, and the word has a feeling to it, and the feeling has a mobilizing effect, and it is felt on cosmic mind, and then corresponds through all the subtle elements of life, all the various energetic avenues, such as potential energy, kinetic energy, radiational energy, electromagnetism, until we find what we have here, tables and chairs and scenes. I frequently say, but it's worth bearing repetition again and again and again. Don't complain about what's in front. You yourself ordered it. You ordered it on the cosmic online system. Don't complain if it's not what you want. So, how do we make this connection? Prayer. Prayer connects. Prayer involves feeling. But what is prayer? Not petitional. Not I want this, I want that. Not a begging kind of thing, but a listening. Prayer is listening. Prayer is stilling the mind, putting ourselves in divine company in reality, feeling this divine presence intimately, and feeling the flow of grace that comes from it, and being in a listening mode, being a receiver. And with that reception, all your life becomes creative, becomes a flow of spontaneous creativity, becomes a delight, and also becomes a revealer about what this life is all about. And with that interaction, our faith increases, our practice increases, but above all, our connection increases. It's a question of going away from ritualistic religion and going to the heart of a real connection, a mystic journey, a mystic connection, where beloved and lover merge in one supreme dance of love. So with these few words, we leave it there. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swami.
Merci beaucoup, Swami.
Merci beaucoup. Bientôt. Bonne nuit.
Thank you, Swami.
Merci, bonne nuit.
Thank you, Swami.